Which leads us, I guess, to the subject of jailbreakers. Sure, they happen from time to time in our happy little family. You don't go over the wall, though, not at Shawshank, and not if you're smart. The searchlights beams go all night, probing long white fingers across the open fields that surround the prison on three sides, and the stinking marshland on the fourth. Cons do go over the wall from time to time, and the searchlights almost always catch them. If not, they get picked up trying to thumb a ride in the Highway 6 or Highway 99. If they try to cut cross country, some farmers see them and just phone the location into the prison. Cons who go over the wall are stupid cons. Shawshank is no Canadian city, but in the rural area, a man humping his ass across country in a gray pajama suit sticks out like a cockroach on a wedding cake.
Over the years, the guys who have done best, maybe oddly, maybe not so oddly, are the guys who did it for the spur of the moment. Some of them have gone out in the middle of a cart full of sheets, a convicted sandwich on white, you could say. There was a lot of that when I first came in here, but over the years they have more or less closed that loophole.
Warden Norton's famous Inside Out program produced the share of escapes, too. There were guys who decided they liked what lay to the right of the height been better than the way to the left. And again, in most cases, it was a very casual kind of thing. Drop your blueberry rake and stroll into the bushes while one of the screws are having a glass of water at the truck, or when a couple of them get too involved in arguing over yards passing, or rushing, or the old Boston Patriots.
In 1969, the Inside Outers were picking potatoes in Sabatis. It was the 3rd of November, and the work was almost done. There was a guard named Henry Poe, and he is no longer a member of our happy little family, believe me, sitting on the back bumper of one of the potato trucks and having his lunch with his carbine across his knees when a beautiful, or so it was told to me, but sometimes these things get exaggerated, 10-point buck strolled out of the cold early afternoon mist. Poe went after it with visions of just how that trophy would look mounted in his rec room, and while he was doing it, 3 of his charges just walked away. 2 were recaptured in Lisbon Falls pinball parlor. The 3rd has not been found to this day.
I suppose the famous case of all was this Sid Nadu. This goes back to 1958, and I guess it will never be topped. Sid was outlining the ball field for the Saturday intramural baseball game when the 3 o'clock inside whistle blew, signaling the shift change for the guards. The parking lot is just beyond the exercise yard on the other side of the electrically operated main gate. At the 3 gates open and the guards coming on duty of those going off mingle, there's a lot of backslapping and bully ragging. Comparison of league bowling scores and the usual number of tired old ethnic jokes.
Sid just trundled his lining machine right out through the gate, leaving a 3-inch baseline all the way from home plate in the exercise yard to the ditch on the far side of Route 6, where they found the machine overturned in a pile of line. Don't ask me how he did it. He was dressed in his prison uniform. He stood 6'2", and he was billowing clouds of lime dust behind him. All I can figure is that, it being Friday afternoon and all, the guards going off were so happy to be going off, and the guards coming on were so downhearted to be coming on, that the members of the former group never got their heads out of the clouds, and those in the latter never got their noses off their shoe tops, and old Sid Nadu just sort of slipped out between the two.
So far as I know, Sid is still at large. Over the 3 years in Ukraine, and I had a good many laughs over Sid Nadu. Great escape. And when we heard about that airline hijacking for ransom, the other one where the guy parachuted from the back door of the airplane, Andy swore up and down that B. Cooper's real name was Sid Nadu.
And he probably had a pocket full of baseline lime in his pocket for good luck, Andy said. That lucky son of a bitch. But you should understand that a case like Sid Nadu, or the fellow who got away clean from the Sabatis potato field crew, Guys like that are winning the prison version of the Irish sweepstakes. Purely a case of 6 different kinds of luck somehow gelling together all at the same moment. A stiff like Andy could wait 90 years and not get a similar break.
Maybe you remember the ways back I mentioned a guy named Henley Baggis, the washroom foreman in the laundry. He came to Shawshank in 1922 and died in the prison infirmary 31 years later. Escapes and escape attempts were a hobby of him, maybe because he never quite dared to make the plunge himself. He could tell you 100 different schemes of all them crackpot, and all of them had been tried in the shank at one time or another. My favorite was the tale of Beaver Morrison and Beanie, the victim who tried to build a glider from scratch in the plate factory basement in the plains he was working from where in circa 1900 book called The Modern Boy's Guide to Fan and Adventure. Beaver got it built without being discovered. Or so the story goes, only to discover that there was no door from the basement big enough to get the damn thing out. When Henley told that story, you could have bust a gut laughing, and he knew a dozen almost as funny.
When it came to dealing Shawshank bust-outs, Henley had it down chapter and verse. He told me once that during his time there had been better than 400 escape attempts that he knew of. Really, think about that for a moment, before you just nod your head and read on. 400 escape attempts. That comes out to 12.9 escape attempts for every year Henley Backus was in Shawshank, and keeping track of them. The Escape Attempt of the Month Club. Of course, most of them were pretty slipshod affairs, that sort of thing that ends up with a guard grabbing some poor sliding slob's arm, growling, "Where do you think you're going, you happy asshole?"
Henley said his class maybe 60 years of them more serious attempts, and he included the prison break of 1937. The year before I arrived at the shank, the new administration wing was under construction. Then the 14 cons got out, using construction equipment in the poorly locked shed. The whole of the southern Maine got into a panic over those 14 hardened criminals, most of whom were scared to death and had no more idea of where they should go than a jackrabbit that does when its headlights pinned to the highway with a big truck bearing down on it. Not one of those 14 got away. 2 of them were shot dead by civilians, not police officers or prison personnel, but none got away. How many had gotten away between 1938 when I came here and that day in October when Andy first mentioned
Zihouteneo
to me? Putting my information in Henley's together, I say 10. 10 that got away clean. And although it isn't kind of the thing that you know for sure, I guess that at least half of those 10 are doing this time in other institutions for lower learning, like the shank. Because you do get institutionalized when you take away that man's freedom and teach him to live in a cell. He seems to lose his ability to think in dimensions. He's like a jackrabbit I mentioned, frozen in the oncoming lights of a truck that is bound to kill it. More often than not, a con who will pull some dumb job that it hasn't a chance in hell of succeeding. And why? Because it'll get him back where he understands how things work.
Andy wasn't that way, but I was. The idea of seeing the Pacific sounded good, but I was afraid that actually being there would scare me to death, the bigness of it. Anyhow, the day of that conversation about Mexico and about Mr. Peter Stevens, that was the day I began to believe that Andy had some idea of doing a disappearing act. I hoped to God he would be careful if he did, and still I wouldn't have bet money on his chances of succeeding. Warden Norton, you see, was watching Andy with a special close eye. Andy wasn't just another deadhead with a number to Norton. They had a working relationship, you might say. Also, Andy had brains and he had heart. Norton was determined to use the one and crush the other.
as there are honest politicians on the outside, ones who stay by there are honest prison guards, and if you are a good judge of character, and if you have some loot to spread around, I suppose it's possible that you could buy enough and look the other way to make a break. I'm not the man to tell you such thing as has never been done. By Andy Dufresne wasn't the man who could do it. Because as I've said, Norton was watching, Andy knew it, and the screws knew it too. Nobody was going to nominate Andy for the Inside Out program, not as long as Ward Norton was evaluating the nominations, and Andy was not the kind of man who tried a casual Sid Nadu type of escape.
If I had been him, the thought of that key would have tormented me endlessly. I would have been lucky to get 2 hours' worth of honest shut-eye a night. Buxton was less than 30 miles from Shawshank, so near and yet so far. I still thought his best chance was to engage a lawyer and try for the retrial, anything to get out from Norton's thumb. Maybe Tommy Williams could be shut up by nothing more than a cushy furlough program, but I wasn't entirely sure. Maybe a good old Mississippi hard-ass lawyer could crack him, and maybe that lawyer wouldn't even have to work that hard. Williams had honestly liked Andy. Every now and then I'd bring these points up to Andy, who would only smile, his eyes far away, and say he was thinking about it. Apparently he'd been thinking about it for a lot of other things as well.
In 1975, Andy Dufresne escaped from Shawshank. He hasn't been recaptured, and I don't think he'll ever will be. In fact, I don't think Andy Dufresne even exists anymore. But I think there's a man down in... How do I say that again?
Zahotaneo.
In Hontaneo, Mexico, named Peter Stevens, probably running a very small hotel in this year of our Lord 1976. I'll tell you what I know is what I think. That's all about I can do, isn't it? On March 12, 1975, the cell doors in cell block 5 opened up at 6:30 a.m. as they do every morning around here except Sunday, as they do every day except Sunday. Sunday, and the inmates of those cells step forward and to the corridor and form two lines as the cell doors slam shut behind them. They walk up to the main cell block gate where they will count off by twos. Guards before being sat on down to the cafeteria for breakfast of oatmeal, scrambled eggs, and a fat bacon.
All of this went according to routine until the count of the cell block gate. There should have been 27. Instead, there were only 26. After a call to the captain of the guard, cell block 5 was allowed to go to breakfast. The captain of the guards, a not half-bad fellow named Richard Gonyar, and his assistant, a jolly prick named Dave Burks, came down to cell block 5 right away. Gonyar reopened the cell doors, and he and Burks went down the corridor together, dragging their sticks over their bars, their guns out. In a case like that, what you usually have is someone who has been taken sick in the night, so sick he can't even step out of his cell in the morning. More rarely, someone has died or committed suicide. But this time, they found a mystery. Instead of a sick man or dead man, they found no man at all. There were 14 cells in cell block 5, 7 to a side, all fairly neat restrictions of visiting privileges as a penalty for a sloppy cell at Shawshank, and all very empty. Gonyar's first assumption was that there had been a miscount or a practical joke. So instead of going off to work after breakfast, the inmates of cell block 5 were sent back to their cells, joking and happy. Any break in the routine was always welcome.
Cell doors opened, prisoners stepped in, cell doors closed, some clown shouting, "I want my lawyer, I want my lawyer. You guys run this place just like a freaking prison. Burke, shut up in there, or I'll rank you." The clown, I ranked your wife, Berkey. Gonyar. Shut up, all of you, and you'll spend the day in there. He and Burks went up in the line again, counting noses. They didn't have to go too far. Whose belongs in this cell? Gonyar asked, in the right side. Night guard.
Andrew Dufresne, the right side answered. That was all it took. Everything stopped being routine, but right then, the balloon went up. In all the prison movies I've seen, this wailing horn goes off when there's been a break. That never happens at Shawshank. The first thing Gonyar did was to get in touch with the warden. The second thing was to get a search of the prison going. The third was to alert the state police in Scarborough to the possibility of a breakout.